Hey, Pam.
Perspective. Good evening to you.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Yeah. I'm always going to say that, you know.
I know. I just got through reading the story about, I had the most the most interesting little thing this what I went through yesterday was well, number one, I'm into that whole thing about realizing that I'm nothing but just a load of stories, right? And then I created the story based on, you know, one of the meetings and it was called Beauty and the Beast. And I'm thinking, oh, this sounds like something Vince would write a story about, It's like seeing, because it's like I've seen all the beast sides of me throughout the years, and really pointed that out. And I've even seen some of the beauty sides, but just to put it all together. And then, of course, I was into this story. And then I thought, well, I'm just creating a whole new story here. It was
Well,
really kind of
enjoy it.
funny.
Yeah.
And then I got into this, like, is this whole non-duality thing just a story? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it is a story until you experience it.
Yeah. Okay.
But
There you go.
let me guarantee you that your experience of it won't be anything like your story of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that. I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's obviously everybody. I'm imagining that everybody has their own experience of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know. Yeah. Interesting.
Mm. It's funny. It's a funny one too. So when I experience it, it's like I want to say I am it and it is me. And it could be anything. It could be a tree I'm walking past.
Yeah.
But really, I guess rationally I'm referring to everything, not just it, whatever that one thing is. But yeah, it's the words don't touch it, of course. Mhm.
That's true about all of this. And I mean, uh, the experience most recently for me is just like, yeah, everything is stories. Everything is just stories and stories and stories. And yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes I can with them and sometimes just, okay, that's a story. I don't want to do stories right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Let me just switch my internet. Limitations, the cage that we're in, but when we get free of that cage, then all that stuff can be quite useful. So we just learn to dismiss the crappy ones. Um, and usually, almost always, you're going to find that the crappy ones are the ones about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm cooking my breakfast this morning, so I'm gonna take my video off while so I don't eat in front of y'all while I'm here listening to this wonderful stuff that's gonna happen.
No worries. Mhm. So how's things been going for you, Dom?
Yeah, pretty good. I had my screening of my film on Thursday.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
super interested in the outcome of that. How did you?
Yeah, it was great. It was great. We had a full house and people really, loved it and it's just a really nice occasion. Lots of friends and um I mean I was nervous. Um and mainly I was nervous and I wasn't nervous so much showing the film as talking about it afterwards. That was what, and I could see how my mind was kind of honing in on this sort of moment when I would have to speak and all this kind of stuff. So it was uncomfortable, the before bit and the Q&A and everything. Um, but once that was all done, it was, yeah, it was just really nice. Really, people were just very enthusiastic. So,
So that point where you felt the discomfort, you were lost in it. That discomfort, you were
I
lost
don't
in the
think so. I
stories.
mean,
No?
I was just, it sort of went in and out. Because I was a bit stressed when there was a few things we hadn't organized, and I was a bit stressed a few days before, and then it died away again, and then I was like, oh, this is just spacious, and like it seems to be just happening by itself, and you know,
Yeah,
and then on the day, it sort of the tension kind of came back, and I had quite a lot of time to kill on the day, which I wasn't expecting. Um, so I could see just the contraction in my body and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't and my mind was constantly going to answering questions, that I thought were going to come up in the Q&A and things like that. Um, and I think it seemed better than normal that I wasn't quite as sort of gripped by it. I was kind of, um, I suppose that I've got not a mantra, but I kind of got this thing at the moment, which is like, okay, there's some sensations happening, and there's some thoughts happening, and just that in itself seems to kind of help a bit.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and they
Do
don't
you
quite.
do you get why? Not that it's important, but I'm thinking it might strengthen that for you if you appreciate that those two things are not actually connected.
Yeah,
But in the old way, they were. They were the same thing.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think and not having them connected seems to weaken their hold somehow.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The illusion
uh,
doesn't quite have the same strength when they're not both working on it. Yeah,
um, it's interesting, and noticing like the next day, and then like new thoughts coming in about like, oh, I wish I'd said this, and I wish I that like there was a charity involved, and we didn't talk about the charity enough, I thought, and then starting to think about because a lot of people were like, "Oh, you've got to make this into a," because it's only a short film, it's 15 minutes. But a lot of people were like, "These characters are great. You need to make a longer film. You need to develop this further, and blah blah blah." And I'm already going, yeah, but the lead guy, maybe I'm going to have to recast that. Maybe that's going to be politically difficult, and it's already started
yeah,
to
yeah.
sort of
Running through
do
the
that, and I'm like,
scenarios.
oh, here we go. It's like now another set of problems that is supposedly sort of throwing up for me. Um, but I don't think I'm not being pulled into them with the same
Good stuff. Yeah,
strength. I mean, it's not like they've gone away at all, but or
yeah. One of the things that plays a big part in this life is that I'm frequently saying, let's wait and see.
mm,
I
yeah,
don't I don't know, but we once would have got lost in possibilities, and now we
Yeah,
go, well, let's just wait and see. It's not going to happen until whenever, we'll find out then.
there's definitely less of a kind of need to have a resolution to something when it comes up. It's like, okay, yeah, there's a sort of allowing it to just be unresolved.
Mm.
Um, that is, yeah, I suppose there was always a sense that if I don't kind of work this out in my mind and fix it, then I can't relax.
But it's not until you
Um,
actually do it that you discover that by not looking for a resolution right now, one will turn up from the
yeah,
outside, so to speak. You don't need
yeah,
to. It doesn't have to be made up by you.
that's
It,
right.
yeah. You have to
And
accept it.
I was doing quite a lot of work with the bot, you know, well, I say a lot of work. I mean, I was having
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
And I find that a useful sort of thing to do, basically. And there was this thing about sort of like performance versus participation. And that was really helpful. Sort of having a mindset of like, this thing's happening, I'm part of it and I'm participating and I'm contributing, but
Mm.
I don't have to perform somehow.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that helped. Um, so yeah, that's all. That was, I mean, it went as well as it possibly could have, I think, which is, you know, really nice. Um, yeah, bloody hot, but apart from that,
Mm.
we were 34 degrees in
Oh,
London that
yeah.
day.
Yeah. Mm. So, what's the future of this film? Are you going to put it in Trop Fest or something?
We're gonna have a festival run, yeah. Um, so we have to work out a kind of strategy for that because there's a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
festivals and that, you can spend a lot of
And
money,
there's a lot of entries too.
yeah, exactly. So it's best if you know someone who knows someone who can make sure it gets watched and things like that. But I mean, mainly it was really the whole thing was just. I mean, it's got a life of its own now, but the whole thing was really just for me to feel what it would be like to write something for myself and direct my own material and go back to doing a bit of directing, which I haven't done for a long time.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, and so that is that's already done, that part of it. So all the rest is sort of,
Mm.
but it feels like it's got a life. It will have a life of some kind, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah.
Maybe it will show in Sydney. You can see it on the big screen. I'll send you a link when it's all up, ready.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Sydney, that's a 2.5 hour drive for me. It's
Oh, what's the nearest one to
yeah.
you then? It's probably nowhere nearer than that has a film festival, short film festival, I would imagine.
There's a couple up and down the coast. There used to be, and we have this thing called Trop Fest, which goes around, and um, I think that comes to Newcastle. Newcastle's probably my closest big town.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, a link would be good. Yeah. Yeah, but it
Mm.
sounds good. It sounds like you're going in the right direction. Everything's working well for you.
Yeah, and that's definitely, what we've been doing and what I've been doing here and played a big part in the whole
Hmm.
thing.
Yeah. Well, part of see, we're not looking to achieve anything as much as now it's kind of just fine tuning stuff. And so
Mm.
opportunities, you're on the lookout for opportunities, and they're almost
Yeah,
always going to come with discomfort.
yeah, right. Yeah.
and you hone your tools, and you just get better and better at, and then things change as a result of.
Mm.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. What about you, Leonard? Haven't seen you for ages. How's things?
Quite fine. I don't know where to start, but I will just say what will come out of my mouth. So, um, no, at the moment I'm quite, I don't know if grateful is the right word, because like some months ago, I think I might have told you about it a bit. Like, um, yeah, there was a romantic story uh, evolving, or at least it looked like this in the beginning, but then it kind of turned out to, yeah, be obvious that I enjoyed being with the person, but not like for 1 week, 24/7. So we don't live in the same city, and it's like a 3 hours distance. So I visited him sometimes for 2 nights in Berlin because I have to go back because of the
Mm.
cats. So I can't leave them alone longer. But when he came, he stayed like for 1 week, and that was just like too much for me. I mean, I was very honest, but also careful. Like I said at some point, look, I think it's better to tell you that I'm kind of socially exhausted now. And I just want to let you know because now I have to perform in order not to make you feel it. And it's okay for me, but it's a bit exhausting and it feels not very authentic. And you will certainly also feel that something is not like 100% or something. And yeah, I think he intellectually understood it, but emotionally it was like a bit like a rejection or something.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, like we decided to just look what happens with each of us when we stay alone for a week or something. And then for me, it was totally clear that if someone has the desire to see me like 1 week 24/7, and I just felt into myself and it felt for me like okay to meet every other week, maybe every 2 weeks or something. And then I really felt okay, I need to put this on the table. And I don't think that it's a good balance because to be realistic, it will be always like either someone will cross my boundaries all the time and then I will feel like or I won't be able to give that to the person which he desires. So it's like not a good
Oh.
harmony, I think. So then I thought like, okay, I have to tell that, and maybe that will be the end of this love story. And then I felt into myself, and there was a voice like, yeah, but I don't want to be alone again. And then I've immediately thought like, that's the worst reason ever. You can't
Yeah.
like it's not a good reason. So in the end, I just said that I think it's better to like make a full stop and maybe try to be friends. And I'm quite happy that with all the honesty and like this
Mm.
being a bit rational about it, let's put it like this. Now it's like developing into a very honest and very beautiful friendship, and I'm quite happy with that. But I noticed that before there was kind of this talking myself into this perfect relationship story, you know, like,
Mm, mm.
and in general, I would say there is still like this swinging back and forth, like back into clarity and back into delusion. But yeah, actually, I discovered a video by a German lady who also, um, yeah, has to do with Liberation Unleashed. And she did some videos in German about the fetters.
Yeah,
And somehow, um, maybe because it's my mother tongue, it kind of, I
yeah,
could
yeah,
connect with it
affected
in a
you. Yeah,
different
yeah.
way again. So actually, I
Mm.
was not so much a fan of the fetters before, but now I'm kind of just out of
Right,
curiosity looking back into them
right.
because
So was
I
that
noticed,
Christine Michelberger or
yeah,
Steffi?
yeah, 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 it's
Yeah,
her. Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, somehow. I don't know if this is rather a suspicion, but I think it is really a bit the case that, of course, in the beginning, um, I did all the exercises with really seeing things, but then after a while, it became more like an intellectual belief. So I think it's worth it, like to look back into it from a
Sure.
experiential angle and yeah, because I think what happens to me is always like the mind comes back in and says, ah, I already know it anyway, but
Mm,
that's like not really experiencing it.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was pleased to hear that you consult your body when considering your boundaries.
Hmm.
That was good stuff. So that is probably one of the strongest or most useful skills you can develop if you
Hmm.
can ask your body things like that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Watch expectations sneaking back in, especially when it comes to the fetters. There's
Hmm.
always that thing. Well, I've got more to work on. You know, look, the fetters will. If you go looking, you'll always find something to work on, no matter when, kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's more about curiosity.
yeah.
Like,
Well, it's a good
um,
curiosity.
yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah. No, it sounds good. It sound again, and of course, this coming in and out business that goes on for a long time. You know, like how far in and how far out. Well, that changes. How long between the pendulum swings that
Mm.
changes. So it's an ever evolving situation. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm kind of clear about, I mean, if we are talking in this fatter terminology, then like desire and ill will, I mean, I see that it is weakened, but
Yeah.
it certainly hasn't disappeared. I mean, there is still,
No.
I still have situations with a lot of reactivity. I mean, I can see that at in the same moment, but and then sometimes it's like being trapped. So I sometimes there is like this non-acceptance of it or resistance, but then at least I can accept it. I can accept that
Mm.
there is resistance, and
Yep.
that's
Yeah.
pretty
And
helpful. And
have you developed a way of recognizing when that turns up? You know, like you're again
mm,
consulting your body most likely, but there'll
mm,
be a contraction and you'll know it's happened.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, it's a bit more about those like I think the base is really this kind of restlessness or something, like I would describe it as that, like the opposite of calm. And
Mm-hmm.
then there are like those thoughts that come in a loop, and I already know them because it's like nothing new, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's like I can regard it as some radio in the background, but sometimes when it gets too frequent, it gets a bit annoying, and then
yeah, yeah.
yeah. But actually now, sometimes when it's really getting annoying, or yeah, well, that's an interpretation, but um, I just shift my concentration to other things, and that's quite nice. I don't know if you heard about this 5 4 3 2 1 exercise. It's like you look for 5 things that you can look at, 4 things that you can
Oh,
touch,
yes. Yep,
three
yep.
things
I
that you
know it
can
now.
hear,
Yeah,
2 that you
yes.
can taste, and no, smell, and 1 that you can taste.
Yeah,
And
so
that,
you rotate through the senses. Yes.
mm,
Yeah. Yeah, and that certainly takes you out of your head. Yeah.
mm,
So let's give that equal footing with the fact that when you do get into a state where you feel there's value in doing that,
mm,
there's also opportunity presenting itself for you.
mm,
So I wouldn't like to see you just get very skillful at pushing it away
mm.
because it'll keep coming back.
Yeah.
So, you know, but it's, yeah, fine to do that, absolutely
Mm,
fine, but worth facing going towards
mm.
some of the shitty stuff when it turns up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the shitty stuff always has to do with um, things being not as they should be, blah blah blah, not
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
not the right place, not the right
yeah,
time, not the right people, not the right job. Yeah, things like that.
yeah. Well, so that's a big one. See, so firstly, I think you're probably at a point where you could consider discriminating between a, a bodily preference and a desire. And so
Mm,
sometimes we'll mistake wanting
mm,
for a desire when in
mm.
fact it's a body preference rather than that. So again, if wanting turns up, that's no problem.
Yeah, but the thing is that yeah, it's a bit different because I was rather paying attention to my body, and if my body really has this desire, and then I felt that there was nothing resonating in my body telling me that I want that.
Mm,
It's only just a thought, nothing more.
mm,
It's just like a thought that
yeah.
was repeated so many times that it became a habit. But actually, it is not really. I mean, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I mean, of course, there's not so much emotion tied into that thought anymore, but it keeps repeating anyway.
Mm.
So,
So one technique that could be useful is to imagine that you're having a conversation with that thought, and
mm-hmm,
you ask it to stop fucking around talking around things and tell me straight, what do you want? What are you trying to tell
mm,
me?
yeah,
Yeah. And the very next thought that pops up will probably be what straight, as really, but worth play, just play with it.
uh-huh, yeah,
Yes. So because if repetition starts happening,
mm,
it's trying to get your attention.
mm,
And if you keep getting lost in the content of it,
mm-hmm,
it doesn't feel heard but it doesn't know how to talk straight.
Hmm.
It wants to give you riddles all the time, or it wants to talk around things.
Hmm.
You know, it wants to be presentable to you.
Hmm.
But what you want is straight talk. What's going on?
Hmm.
And it's interesting to watch and see how repetition amplifies the content of the
Hmm.
thought. You know, just like shouting it
Hmm.
does that. So repetition does that. It just
Hmm.
all makes it stronger. But see, it's like the only way it knows how to talk to you is with a story. But you're
Hmm.
wanting to know not the story, you're wanting to know what's behind the story.
Hmm.
So kind of if it's repeating itself and you kind of ask it, talk straight. Tell me, stop with the story and tell me straight, kind of thing. That'll
Yeah,
take you
I mean,
somewhere.
anyway, I mean, I'm quite sure that I know already what's behind it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? You know, but you don't want to know that you know.
I know, I think I know, but I don't know what to do with it, or I can't change it because it's like, yeah, because for like 20 years, I always took substances to like pimp my reality, like
Mm,
to make it feel more than the usual reality or something.
yeah,
And I'm not doing that anymore. And then there's always like this restlessness that comes back and asking like, why isn't there happening more? And then the thoughts that come are like, maybe you have to move to a different country, maybe you need a relationship, maybe you have to change your job, maybe this kind
yeah.
of stuff. So but it's like just out of this restlessness and wanting to pimp up the
Mm,
yeah present moment or something. And then the thing is that whenever I get back to paying attention to the present moment, then it is getting more interesting than all of this shit that is repeating. And a funny thing also is that recently I just had the impulse to buy materials to do for in order to do a painting, and I didn't do this for 10 years or something. And then just spent like the whole day experimenting with colors and this until I found that the image was perfect. And I that was really like yeah, I think that I have such a long history of pissing off into my fantasy world. And now, like, the equilibrium is already shifting a bit more to preferring real experiences, or let's say, like,
mm.
to do something that doesn't have to do with, yeah, intellectual activities or, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
imagination
that's
or
good.
something.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, when I say I know what's behind it, and maybe it's not true. Maybe I just don't want to look into it, and that's why I say, I know it already. Like,
Mm.
I'm not quite sure about that.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one. You can know without knowing that you know, or you can know that you know, but you don't know what you know. You know,
Mm,
yeah. And of course, a lot of the time is we know, but we don't want to know that we know because it means in the old way, we have to do something about it. We have to make a decision or whatever. And
mm,
so we don't want to do that, you know? Yeah. But it's also interesting, isn't it? That this stuff comes and
mm.
goes and hovers around and repeats itself and does what, yeah.
mm,
And see, the amazing thing is that part of the opportunity is to see that you don't actually need to do anything, that the
mm,
doing will happen as
mm,
a result of circumstances. And there's no, not usually, there's not any urgency
mm,
with coming to some conclusion or making some decision or whatever. You wait and let life make the decision for you.
mm. Yeah, I was already, yeah, I don't know. I was reading something about mythology, and in various mythologies there are these tricksters, like gods or spirits that like just turn the order upside down. And I find this idea pretty cool, like, because whenever we humans things like, everything is put in boxes and it's like such a nice
Yeah,
order,
yeah,
then this trickster comes again and turns everything upside down.
absolutely. Love it. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and that makes everything more alive as well. So I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
looking at it a bit from this angle
Well, that's
also.
yeah, that's the kind of this stuff is a version of that in a way, isn't it?
Mm,
We're going, well, the old way, the old conventional way, the rules that were laid down for us, they're pretty
mm,
superficial, so
mm,
it's yeah, let's try things out. Let's see it from a new perspective, and that turning things upside down is a way of
mm,
confronting us with our expectations, isn't it?
mm.
Hmm. Hmm. So if you say it's a kind of a strange one, if you say, well, there can't be anything wrong, then what presents itself as something wrong really has another message,
Hmm.
and it can be like a sign that pops up that says, "Look here, have a look here. That's what this is about." But it changes to the point where things happen, things pop up, and we just go, "Oh, okay, so you're back," and
Hmm.
don't worry about it. Don't need to get involved with it at all. Yeah.
Hmm.
It's easy to forget some things, and one of the ones that I was talking about with somebody today that was that they stumbled upon that there is no such thing as continuity, right?
Hmm.
That continuity is our construct using
Hmm.
time usually, and
Hmm.
talking about our past and our present and our future and so on. So there's all of that. But when you get that every moment is absolutely fresh, and it's just here, it just it didn't come from anywhere, and it doesn't go to anywhere, although I use the concept that it comes out of my mystery bag and passes through my experience and goes back into the mystery bag. That's just a kind of a sloppy metaphor, but the fact that any now is an instant that's absolutely fresh and unique and didn't come out of the past. The past
Hmm.
had involvement, but it wasn't. It didn't give birth to the present.
Hmm.
That's a subtle one. That's a bit hard to kind of come across, but there's great value in imagining that every instant is absolutely unique and fresh and standalone. Yet it's not static and it's not evolving, and it's you can't even get your mind around how it can be. So it becomes just a mystery, that this. I mean, it's a really clumsy way to talk about it, because before I even said the word this, what I was referring to, which is unknown, was already a new this and a new one and a new one and a new one. So it's
Mm.
like, yeah, it gets impossible, but it's a subtle one, but it's a really, really good one. That it's the virginal nature. It's probably not a good way to put it, but it does get the message across that it's absolutely a first time that this instant has ever turned up.
Hmm. Yeah, and then I mean the so-called knowledge, or maybe like the knowledge about yourself, isn't that just like accumulated, repeated thought? I mean,
Yeah. So for me, it's really clear. I know myself about as much as I know about this lounge I'm sitting on, or this wall behind me, or that tree out there, or whatever. I really have no idea.
hmm,
It's just such a magical thing that it happened and it got created, and here it is. And it's beyond explanation or even description. I can only touch a really superficial surface level when I relate to, and that's the so with myself as well. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't
yeah, and it's
even.
when you think you know, really, isn't that really like striving for control or like
Yeah, yeah, with absolutely.
security
That's
or
right.
something?
Yeah, yeah. When
Yeah.
you think you know is the beginning of suffering.
Hmm.
Even if you think you know that you don't know, it's still true. Yeah. So there's this kind of weird. I can't look. The best I can express it for you is
Mm.
uh, from I feel it here in my chest, on my around my heart. That's interesting, isn't it? But it's a feeling of joy that's
Yeah.
associated with that absolute mystery, that not knowing. It's just great freedom in that. Great.
Ah, yes. I had told you once that I was thinking about going to this ecstatic dance party. And then some weeks ago, I finally did it. And it was pretty interesting because it was like the first time after my 5 years of being sober that I went to a place with a lot of people around me dancing, and I really felt totally uncontrolled. Like I did not there was not this observing myself from outside or like thinking about how it looks or and there was even like one kind of exercise with we were just walking around the room. It was kind of a more warming up. And then you would just stop in front of a stranger, look him into the eyes, and try to communicate with him by dancing. And I think before that would have been something that I would have, yeah, that had would have made me a bit anxious, or I think it did actually. But the nice thing was that where yeah, I really noticed that it was a bit stressful for me to hold the eye contact, but then I would just close my eyes and dance a bit and then open my eyes again and look at this stranger again and then um, but I felt like really appreciated in my shyness also. And that was a very beautiful encounter, actually.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I guess that in an exercise like that, you would become really aware of thoughts and body, and
Mm.
that they were separate incidences. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you would see thoughts trying to get in on the act.
Yeah,
The,
and I felt that, I mean, mm, you know that I spent like the last years rather secluded or not so much in groups or like not
mm,
having so many social contacts. But then I really, it really felt like this is something that would be nice to explore more
mm,
because this like encounter with people, but not via talking, like rather in this physical,
yeah.
childish, playful way. And yeah,
Yeah. Good stuff.
um, because I noticed that it's a bit of a trauma also because when I was like around 20 and I moved to Berlin and then I went to those gay places, I felt like always exposed to this hypersexualized atmosphere and people looking at me, scanning my body, and I noticed that it felt difficult for me to be in front of a male person that is looking at me while I am moving as I'm moving, you know? Like, and that was really interesting because, and I felt I should explore that more because I could heal that in some way
Mm,
doing this.
yeah. Yeah. Some triggers can lie dormant and until they get activated,
Mm,
and then it can be like, well, we can get this old flood of things, so habitual stuff as well. So it's an interesting one that we can have intimacy, and when intimacy becomes sexual, it becomes a different thing altogether.
mm,
And it's a really, in a way, frequently, it's a way of avoiding intimacy.
mm. Yeah, interestingly, it's a bit similar with my romantic story that turned into a friendship because now that there are not these exaggerated expectations that probably a lot of people have in
Mm.
romantic
Yeah, sure.
stories, um, because we are kind of all conditioned by those stupid movies and stuff like that. But now that it's like really totally honest, I also feel that I feel more genuine in giving, um, yeah, in caring for this person because
Mm.
he recently went through quite a difficult situation, and then I just felt like um, he needed some company in that, and I really felt the genuine desire
Good.
to
Yeah,
be on at his side and so on. So,
yeah, excellent. So I imagine, I don't know how true I am, but I do imagine, and I've certainly, it's based on observations to an extent, that there is a there is a hypersexualized culture amongst gays, right?
mm, I don't know
But
if
there's
it's not.
also a hyper romanticism.
Mm,
that comes along with that. So
Mm,
that conditioning is pretty strong stuff, you know. If you're not
mm,
this way, there's something wrong with you, kind of thing.
mm.
So yeah, learning to be individual, learning to read your own signals is big deal. Yeah,
Yeah, but it was kind of that I stepped with one foot into this romantic illusion, and then, like, I mean, it didn't really last for a long time because I just felt like that my system was shutting down, like, oh no,
yeah, you're having a strong message. Yeah,
can't do that. I don't know. It's just like, what for? Like, it's too exhausting to
yeah,
match those kind of, I don't know,
yeah,
expectations or
yeah,
expectations that you also have towards yourself then, and it doesn't really make any sense.
yeah. Oh, thanks, Leonard. That's good.
Thank
All of
you.
that's good stuff. I like what I hear. Yeah. How about you, Jay? How's things for you?
Hi, Vince. I've been noticing thoughts more and more, not getting caught in it. That was interesting.
Yeah,
Most of them don't have a grip on me. I can see it as like wind or whatever. It just passes. Then there is a thought that repeats quite a lot, which is like if I don't believe thoughts, uh, then what might happen? Will I miss out on something? And there's a thought that projects a lack. For example, one of the things that it says is I haven't crossed that line yet. I haven't been on that edge yet. So if I don't take that thought seriously, then what will happen? So I don't know if there's any message or what does it mean, or it's just a passing thought like any other thought.
yeah, yeah. So what comes up here is that those moments when you can recognize that thought exists in parallel to whatever is happening, that it's not a cause of, and it's not connected. It's just it's just stimulated, if you like, by what's happening, but there's no actual connection between what is happening and the thought. When those moments are appreciated, it accumulates into a trust where you know that things are not going to go to shit if you don't listen to your thoughts. You just get but it's experience that tells you that, not another thought. So a thought can tell you about another thought, but that's just thoughts doing what thoughts do. And it may be accurate or it may not be accurate, you know, essentially that's irrelevant. So it's you recognizing that you had a moment, you had several seconds of things happening, and there was a happening and there was thoughts, and maybe the thoughts were about the happening, or maybe the thoughts were wanting you to move away from the happening, or whatever, but they weren't actually connected. It seems like they were, but they weren't. And every moment of experience in that adds up, gets connected, gets accumulated with other moments. And eventually you'll get to the point where you go, well, I hear you thought saying that I'll get into trouble if I don't listen to you. Go for your life. Do what you want, say what you want, right? But I'm busy at the moment. I'm busy experiencing, and I'm experiencing you as a thought as well. And I'm experiencing you wanting me to do something which I'm not going to do. I don't need to do it. You know, you said yourself earlier that you have experienced the thoughts being just like the wind, you know, they're just there. Well, when a thought turns up that seduces you and you find that you're following what it's about, then another thought might turn up that say, the wind. What about the wind? And then you reevaluate, you change your relationship with that first thought. You see, these things happen or not. There's no credit when they do. There's no harm when they don't. It's just the way things work. But like I was saying to Lennart, those repetitive thoughts are trying to tell you something.
Mm.
So it is a case of being willing to listen to what it's trying to say. And even if you don't get the message, you can still just acknowledge that it's trying to tell you something, but you can't quite hear it.
Mm.
And you can kind of metaphorically ask it to
Mm.
present differently so that it's clearer what the message is. And it will likely come in the form of a thought too.
Mm.
So you're at the point of evaluating your thoughts. How useful are they?
Mostly what I notice is sensations, and sometimes they get intensified when thoughts are not listened to
Mm.
in my throat or chest or somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because that's where you imagine that the thought is connected to that you weren't listening.
Mm.
It's really tricky one. I don't know quite how to put it, but it's like the thought story and the experience are both reading from the same script, but they're quite
Yes.
independent. Yeah.
Mm.
Mhm.
I see that sometimes thoughts seem to be very serious, thinking about a serious topic, and suddenly some silly stuff comes in between, and I laugh and say, "Where did this thing come from?" So I kind of get a feel that thoughts have no clue of what's happening or
Mm.
what's going
Good.
on.
You know, for me, the it seems like the reaction to seriousness is to laugh. Laugh, seriousness itself is funny. Why would we be serious about anything? What is there to be serious about? So when the realization that this is serious turns up, it just promotes a a letting go, a laughing. Yeah, it's just wow.
Yeah, it
Because
has
it's funny,
reduced
isn't it? You go on.
it has reduced a lot, the seriousness. It felt like pursuing a project towards a successful end, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
not the case now. But some of these thoughts still grab the attention and say, "Oh, is this right? Should I do this? Should I do that?" Gets caught in it for
yeah,
just for a while.
yeah. Yeah, see, your thoughts are you, so it knows where all your buttons are. It knows how to get your attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, something that's just curious to me. It's like when we first opened the meeting today, and I asked you, Vince, how you were, and you said, "Oh, good." And then you said, "But I'm always going to say that." And so that's curious because, um, well, I guess that was the curiosity. Is like, we always do say that, which I guess is just a social conditioning because all of us have stuff going on down inside or hidden or whatever we call it. And but that's a conditioning. But then there's also like maybe a bit of something that you kind of referred to before as maybe just like when we meet people or when we come across people or our paths cross or and out of politeness or we might be able to see that someone is obviously in distress or whatever we might seem to notice or and then it's like something you mentioned before that it's like we pretend not to see or something. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious. It's like, and I guess that maybe is a boundary thing. I don't know. But I guess the reason it was curious to me was because, of course, I do that. I mean, that my conditioning is, I slap on this happy face and this cheery, bubbly personality, which in truth is just very deep intensity, and um, and can be quite heavy. So it's really hard. And for years, I mean, like years and years and years, I remember thinking, when I would be involved in a situation, thinking, that's not me. Who I'm being in that conversation or in that situation is not me. I know it's not me, but I don't know how to distinguish the difference. That was the big curious thing for me. And people thought I was crazy, which, and so did I, because I could separate. But I guess that's now that I have a lot more of an understanding, an experiential understanding that it's not me. That I'm just, for as far as conditioning goes, is that something that, starts to fall away where you just don't feel like you have to go into that animation or
yeah. Well, it's going to vary again. It's going to be an individual thing for sure. Yeah. So I do what you were talking about in certain social situations. I will just say fine because it's just a courtesy that's going on. How are you going? That's good. I tried for a while to train myself instead of saying how are you going to say g'day. That was going to be the greeting that didn't actually ask for how you're going. But even in a social situation, if somebody says how you going, it triggers I look in a mirror, so to speak. I do consider how I'm actually feeling, and the reason that I'll always say good. This sounds a bit crazy, is because I am always good, even if I'm not.
Well, and I guess that's kind of something that comes up for me quite a bit these days. So I'm playing around with about just how authentic do I really need to be all the time? Can I just kind of put a little bit of a lid on it or a barrier on it, or is that whatever? So it's something it's a kind of experiential thing. But there was something else that was said in one of our meetings recently that I knew at the time you said it to me, because it was in response to something I said. I knew at the time you said it that it was very profound and had significant meaning for me, but I could not understand what it meant. And I kept trying to grasp it. And I felt like it was just a big target, like pointing at me. This is for you. this is something I need to hear, but then I couldn't grasp it. But it had to do with having compassion for yourself, I think. And you were saying something about that because I have a lot of curiosity about whether or not that's definitely true for this Pam, is that the lack of compassion for self sometimes, which then might perhaps shade or color how have compassion with others. Do you remember what that was that you said? Because
No,
it was basically pointing to something like, if you can't have or don't have, or if there's an inability to have compassion for self, then that's a good place to look, maybe.
yeah, okay, I do vaguely remember that one. Yeah, yeah. So what is compassion? What would you?
Well, in the dissecting of the word, it would mean with pertaining to something with a passion about it. Like I would think, kind of like, I don't know, uh, empathy, or it's really interesting because there are times when there has been a, a tremendous, serious amount of compassion that just arises. And so I do know what it feels like. And it is actually the way that I would describe it, that I'm calling compassion, is that, when you're genuinely feeling what someone else is, perhaps maybe what they're experiencing or going
Yeah.
through. And
Well, that would be empathy, I would say.
yeah, that would be empathy. I agree with that.
Yeah.
So
So what if we just know that somebody is going through something, but we can't really appreciate what it is, then we can have compassion.
okay, right now it just feels like a lot of puzzle pieces floating in the air inside
Yeah,
my
yeah.
head.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so it must be
Okay, so
something
let's
that this
let's let's step back a bit and look at it again from a
uh,
slightly different angle or a slightly bigger distance or something. Then, and and partly what it's got to do with, as I see it, is an appreciation. I'll say that word again, underline that word. It's a big one. An appreciation for the intensity of something, even though we don't know what it is.
ah, okay, that makes more sense, because then it's like something you might just, yeah, you can
Yeah.
tell that someone is very, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So what does it mean to have compassion for myself?
ah, that's the question then. What does it
Mm.
mean that there is something? Okay, okay.
Yes. Yeah, you
So
got
it's
it.
kind
Yeah.
of, it's like it something might be really, but I might be difficult
You
apparently
don't, yeah.
feeling, but you okay. Okay, well, that makes perfect sense, because I think that does happen with me quite a bit. So I guess that probably because I think I'm supposed to know, like if there's an intense situation that I'm supposed to know
Yeah. Well,
or
that's the
figure it
opposite.
out.
That's the absolute opposite of compassion,
Yeah, which is probably
which is a
so it.
separation, isn't it? That knowing is needing to know is
Yeah,
like a separation.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that helps, because I just went through something like this. Yes, so it clicked on, and light bulb just yesterday. It's like, oh, okay. And I had no idea. It's the weirdest thing because where I am here, it's very, very hot, like very hot. And um, as I went outside, and actually I sat outside in the heat. Of course, it was a covered, shaded patio with ceiling fans and stuff, so it wasn't unbearable, and had the most wonderful, beautiful experience. But then several hours after that, I walked outside, and the only thing I could think of was, this is too hot. I'm supposed to go walking with a friend of mine this afternoon, and I already know the the body just is not up to it, cannot, and didn't really know how. And then it kind of segued into a feeling that compounded to where Pam just sat and allowed herself to feel all this stuff, or allowed the feelings just to be there, but really, really not having a clue of what it might be. And one little voice saying, this could be something you really need to be afraid of. And one little voice might be saying, okay, this is the part you don't like. And I mean, these little things coming up, but the whole time through all those hours of it, thinking, I don't know what it is. And for some reason, I thought I should. Okay. So now I can have compassion. Thank you very much, Vince. You've answered those two questions that I've had.
Thank you, Pam. It's great to see that light bulb moment when it happens. Yeah. So we're floating down like a leaf, and we're getting down to kind of subtleties that are immense in number. These subtleties, and none of them are describable. So we just use this metaphor, just say this word, this. It's just this that's happening. We don't need to know the details of it, because we just know that this is happening. We don't know, that's just the way we say it. But there is the experience of this, but we can't even isolate characteristics of the experience unless we get back up into the mind and start dissecting it again. So there is this wonderful, vague experience that doesn't never quite comes into focus to say it's this or that or something else. Yeah. That whole thing was a bit vague, wasn't it?
Well, it's interesting because it's almost like once you almost kind of try to label it as this, it's like separation has almost already occurred in a way because
Yeah. Yes.
the labeling of it itself is already something that's different than what the label
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like we try and tease it out and make it separate in order to be able to put a label on it or to describe it or whatever.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, it just passes through as a wordless experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Labels create separation. Labels stop us having an experience. We relate to the label as if it were the thing. It's a really interesting one. It's that power of the word again, of language, to shape our perception, to direct us, and
It's almost like when the labeling doesn't happen, it's almost as if it's like a truer experience in a sense. Like if, but like both of them are ultimately still true, but it's like when a label pops up of like, oh, this is pain, it's like it's already past or beyond pain as the most present experience. But like if the labeling doesn't occur, then, you know,
yeah,
whatever's there is just whatever's there.
yeah. Whatever's here is just here.
Hmm. Like the labeling just makes it so it's like you're now at least one step behind at a minimum,
Mm,
almost.
yeah.
It was interesting, like something I noticed yesterday is just how, so like I was going on a bike ride and it's, you know, it probably ended up being at least an hour and a half or something like that. And it's just so crazy how your experience can just oscillate so much and like it can reach such polar extremes that it's like it's not it's as if like now um like you can not like you're doing it but like it's like it shows up in your experience where it moves through like extreme levels of pain, like emotional pain or whatever, and uncomfortability. And then it can just move randomly, like straight into like just amazing, wholehearted experiences, but like all on its own, almost without even, you know, reference to like someone or something in the outside world provoking it. Like it just happens like that all on its own as if it's like not like emotional baggage comes up because like it might just come out of nowhere without even any like story or like it's not like a trauma or something comes up. It's just like out of nowhere. It's like for some reason experience might feel like so uncomfortable and so painful, but then like 30 minutes later it's like the most joyous experience ever. And it's not because like someone said something or
Yeah.
anything like that. And then it gets like it's not destabilizing all the time, but it's just like wow, like it's like there's a little bit of like of a thought of like why, like why is this happening? But you know, I find that to be so weird because it's like that.
Mm,
At least in the past, maybe that could happen, but it would at least get perceived as though it's like you would have thought that it was like your doing or something that someone or something said, but it's like now you can just see that sometimes it just happens so randomly without any like provocation, and that's a like a weird part.
Mm. Well, it's kind of, yeah. Mm. The amazing thing is that things are always changing, and it's perfectly reasonable that we have pendulum swings and we oscillate in and out of whatever. Things don't generally just, well, see, both things are true. Okay, so we're going to say one thing. I can say, well, what turns up almost always is triggered. I would say always, but I'm just not sure about that. It's triggered. If it's in you, it's one of the senses being stimulated, or a thought, a mind sense is having some experience, and then we react to that. So that those things are triggered, but we often don't see the trigger. It's at an unconscious level, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
I just I I keep having experiences where I see the flash of a movie happening before an action takes place in this body. Like I see the little movie of me getting a glass and getting a drink, or picking that bottle up and taking the lid off it. I can see it happening, and it's not just one thing, and it's not one clear little thing. It can be, like I don't know how to describe the experience that happens before an event. That it's like that almost always happens.
Like
But
it
the
feels
need,
more third person.
well, it certainly has an objective nature about it. It feels like that. Yeah, it's not generated. It's the source of things. The source of things is not inside me. Even the thoughts that turn up are probably triggered from the outside. The nature of them might come from inside, but the fact that that one is there is probably triggered from something external, or another thought, which is almost, I can kind of see it as external because they just arrive. I mean, they don't arrive. No matter what I say, they don't arrive. They're there. They're not there, and then they are there. There's no arriving happening. That's so fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the oscillation and the movement and the inexplicable nature of something really intense can turn up, and then minutes, seconds, or whatever later, it's not there anymore, and then something else can be there, and that's just, there's just no predicting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, this gets a little more profound, and I'm not sure you want to tackle this topic, but it comes up for me a lot just in that situation you described. So, how much, I know that there is no person here doing anything, whatever, whoever knows that, but whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just happening. But there still comes that sneaky little mind saying, you could have control over this. You could, like, things are changing, yes. How much control do you really have? And then going back and forth on how do you? I mean, I know our conditioning influences, but there still is that little line of
Mm.
thought that comes up quite frequently about if they're really, and it appears to me that it's not possible for who I really am to have any control over anything, because that's just not the nature of who I am. So I couldn't. But yet there's sort of like a gray area or a door open all the time that goes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that one. Yeah. It's let's say this. It's old language that says you could have control. New language would say you could have the illusion of control. Yeah. Now, it may be perfectly appropriate for you to present as though you had control under certain circumstances. So certain social circumstances or certain whatever. If the policeman tells you to move on, drive forward in your car, and you do it, you could describe that as having control. But you can also see that it was a result of conditions that happened. So you didn't tell your foot to press on the accelerator, but that's what happened when the policeman said, move your car forward. So it's certainly appropriate to behave as if you have control sometimes.
Well, because that, like, in a situation where something is happening and there might be the impulse, and you might even get this little trigger or movie in your head. You could see yourself saying something, whatever, and then you say it, and it doesn't go well with the surrounding parties involved.
Mm.
Then there's that. How much control or illusion of control is there? Is the body just going to say it? I have, just to play around with that before, I have actually just sat and just in awareness, just waiting to see what the body's going to do. And then wondering at what point is there any other control besides the body doing it? And then also like saying, is it just conditioning? Is it also just what might happen, what might come up, or a thought that seduces my attention and has it? So it's just really, okay, I get it. It's just 1 second moving to another second, and then the curiosity and discovery of like, well, okay. And I suppose if it goes the way that when you were talking about that, how you get this happened just last night with me, when there's a show that I watch with my granddaughter who's 20 years old, and there was going to be an outcome, right? And so about within minutes before the outcome was going to be announced, I saw a picture flash on the screen. It wasn't in my imagination, it was on the screen. And then I knew that was part of the solution. And then there was a curiosity there was kind of a certainty about it. It's like, well, isn't that interesting? Maybe just an intuition, but a certainty that that's what the outcome is going to be. And then the thought was, well, that's just 50% of it. There's another 50% of the outcome. If I know that 50% so certainly, then isn't that interesting? So then the thought was, well, just pay a little more attention, focus a little bit more on what is there. So it's a TV thing, right? So producers or whoever behind the scene, or photographers, whoever's chosen what scenes to show or what to put, perhaps that's just my intuition falling into what they want me to see or think. but it instantly came to me that I knew the other portion of that. So I texted my daughter really quickly because I I said this is what's going to happen, and I put down really quickly what the two things that I saw. And she wrote me back and said, texted me back and said, "Thanks a lot for spoiling it for me." And I went, "No, no." I said, "I don't know anything. It's not like I know anything. That's just what I'm predicting." And then she immediately went, "Oh, okay. All right. Well, then all's forgiven." Don't, because she was really mad, on what I was telling her. And then within minutes of this unfolding, half of it came true. And so I wrote her back and I went, "Well, at least I was half right." And she said, "Stop texting me. I'm not watching." She must have paused it for a little bit and she was behind me. So she was telling me and I said, "Oh, okay." So I just let it go and never said anything, but I could tell she was really mad at me. And then it ended up being that I was right about both of these solutions. So then there's been this curiosity about what the fuck was that? How did I see that? How did I know that? And actually, the most logical thing is that's what the producers were probably trying to guide people or viewers into seeing or watching or whatever. It's not, but then there's another part of me like maybe this whole complete oneness. I just knew it because that's what happens and it's already happened. And so it's like, oh my God, does that now know that I can tell the future?
It's interesting, isn't
Oh,
it?
isn't
Yeah.
that like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife and I
Sorry.
do that all the time. We watch these murder mysteries or whatever, and we try and pick
Yeah.
who done it, early
Yeah.
in the show and so on. And
That's
and
funny.
I frequently find myself saying to my wife, "Did the cameraman just show us something?" You think, you're like they give you clues, but you don't know you're getting them because it's a camera angle or it just stays a bit longer than it would normally on face, one person's face, or
Yeah.
all sorts
Or
of little
or
things.
catching that particular glimpse. And does that
Yeah,
also fall under hypnosis of some sort? Because that's probably, a lot of what those people do when they're showing you what they want you to see.
yep.
It's like a mass hypnosis.
Well, they do frequently do a subliminal thing where they put one
Right.
frame in, and you don't. That frame is a 30th of a second, and
Yeah.
so it doesn't register consciously, but you do see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they banned that in advertising in this country, but
You
because it
know,
is like hypnosis.
you know,
Mm.
uh, I've talked about this before, the fact that, like I was a chiropractor for my professional life, but there were some things that I could do. Now, sometimes it might just be something that an older mentor of mine showed me, like just pressing on a certain spot here will actually relieve tension or stress in this particular spot. And it just happens to always be true, always be right for whatever reason, whether it's just me thinking that or whatever. But the point is, in doing things like that, I can't tell you how many patients would turn to me and go and look at me with this look in their face and go, "Are you a witch?"
You say yes, yes.
And so that's like now I think when I haven't talked to my granddaughter since that thing last night, but I think that's the thing she's going to say, like, "How did you know? What was that?" I know she's convinced that I knew something, that I heard it from somewhere or something. I don't know. But and I heard that one time before that is that thing about whatever decision you make, if it's like the way you wanted it to turn out, you take credit for it, right? If it
Mm.
if it didn't turn out the way that you were wanting it to, I don't mean to do this lightly, but I always thought about this like in Christianity, people will all uh, assemble in masses and pray for this one particular outcome. And then if there's a different outcome, the question to me was very obvious, like, well, prayer doesn't work because you didn't get what you asked for, like that thing. But then, and I've never really heard a good answer on that. I mean, I don't need an answer. I mean, I have a different belief, right? But I mean, the problem is, it's like that's what actually solidifies belief in so many people in their religion, is that, because 50% of the time you're going to be right. And then you
Mm.
can say, yeah, I knew it. God has answered my prayers.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
and 50% of the time you're not right. So then they'll just say, well,
Yeah,
you hear varying things. But
yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting
Or
one,
even
that, isn't
yeah, well, yeah, I definitely have. And there's another little something that I'm curious about, and this might fall under that compassion thing we were talking about, because for some reason there have been some things that really irritate. Well, okay, so yes, like 60 years ago, I did graduate from an all girls Catholic school, right? And I'm still friends with some of those girls. And, of course, they've always known that I was a bit different. I wasn't Catholic then, I was a non Catholic at the school, but I've always been different. And one of them was convinced that all I need to do was just be Catholic. The other one had left the Catholic Church and become more of a Methodist and kind of, I don't know, but she's very deeply rooted in Christianity. And she just believes that all of my problems would be solved if I was in the Christian faith. Now, of course, granted, through the years, I've tried all kinds of things. But the bottom line here is, today, at the age that all three of us are now, Pam seems to have a much interesting, because I did bring this up in one of our meetings a couple of weeks ago about this one friend of mine that I was texting, and how she wanted to know, when I told her that everything in life is perfect as it is, she wanted to know who told me that, right? So we had this conversation back and forth since then, and I was asking her, I'm just curious why you wanted to know who told me that. But anyway, or what your thought process was. And she never would answer me, but she did finally write me back something. And I'm not going to quote it specifically because I can't remember it and I'll probably butcher it. But basically, it was a beautiful thought process that anyone who lives, anyone who believes that life is perfect exactly as it is, must be living in a good manner.
it? Okay. Yeah.
And I thought, because she's really clever, but and all I could do was, like, just react with a little heart emoji, because I thought that was a really tender reply, and and it kind of puts it out there on the table, whatever. But there is a certain thing of, like, in that whole vein, there are certain things that really irritate me, or seem to trigger me about the way that Christianity in particular, or that they approach things, and they're thinking that they're being compassionate.
Mm.
This actually goes into a much deeper story, which, for me to have this experience, which I won't go into, but it does tie in through, and it also ties in something that's really beautiful about what you're talking about life just happening, one thing after another. And I witnessed that just a couple of days ago with my granddaughter being here, and one of these old friends of mine showing up at my house. And there was with all the stuff that was going on in life, there was a very tender moment. And my friend of the very deep Christian faith had a very deep kind of a reaction with my granddaughter that I don't share anymore, because it's kind of like you're feeling sorry for someone and saying, you poor thing experiencing this. I understand how hard this, and you're really being in, and it was very compassionate. And And I guess I'm not there because I've just been having the most fun with this 20-year-old young lady discovering a lot of the things that we sit here and talk about that she has no clue of what we're talking about to the degree we are. She's just experiencing what she's experiencing. And I'm so overjoyed with the things that I see her acknowledging and experiencing and being able to verbalize that I'm just so thrilled about all of it and supportive and happy. And it's like, that's, and just being joyful about it. But I noticed there's a certain amount of seriousness, one of your favorite words recently. Yes, there's a certain amount of seriousness about that is a little bit off-putting that and I won't say it triggers me so much anymore, but I think because I spent the majority of my life trying to fit in that mold, and now I realize there was nothing wrong with me the whole time. It's just that that mold didn't fit me very well. So,
Mm. Mm.
yeah, that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, that got a bit of stuff going. Yeah, that relationship with people who are religious is interesting. I recognize that people who are seriously religious see themselves as good people, and they probably are good people in a lot of ways. Yet the inconsistency in the fairy stories are really obvious to me, you know. Like I saw somebody on television say, I forget what it was, the circumstances now. Was it a flood or some disaster had happened and God saved me? And I thought, yeah, great, God saved you. What about God causing the disaster in the first place? Oh, but we don't see that. That's not God. God only does the good stuff at the other end. Yeah? They're not even sophisticated fairy stories. Yet they're good people who are duped, if you like, into believing those things. Yeah, it is a tricky one.
I think what I notice with religious people is just it ends up being a lot of whether or not they definitely don't see it, but I do, is it just ends up being a lot of cognitive dissonance because, you know, because they could theoretically use like the idea of God and stuff as a tool to get to
Absolutely. Yeah.
awakening of they
Mm.
easily could. Like, oh yes, like God saved me. But then if they actually took the time and effort to be like, oh, but God also caused the flood, so to speak, like it could 100% be a great tool for awakening, but yet they they only choose to look at it through one perspective of that they view everything as good and bad, and even the devil, the idea of the devil or whatever, it just creates this automatic duality where it's like, oh, you know, but it's like what they don't realize is like God is God and the devil for their analogy to actually be correct, and they don't get that.
Mm. Yeah. But you can also see that there's an
And they really could because it's like it even says in the passages, like I mean, I'm not like from a Christian background, but it's like God created the devil is how I understand it.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, God created everything, so he had to create the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one.
But isn't it also due to this feeling of, I don't know, I belong to this group and we are the ones who are righteous, and I mean, you just submit to some authority, and that's like the very easy way. Like, you don't have to
Mm.
handle your doubts, you don't have to inquire into anything yourself. It's just like, but I guess if that belief is shaken or if that authority is not credible anymore, maybe that, yeah, will turn you into the total opposite direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a blowout and a mind boggle as to the complexity of being human. There is just so much, and everybody just wants to feel good.
And people want simple answers.
They all want answers. That's the trap, isn't it? Yeah. So, well, I've got the answer to everything. That there is no answer. There you go.
Well,
Mm.
it was funny because maybe like, I don't know, maybe like, well, it probably had to have been at least potentially a year before my awakening. I was really going through it. I was just in a really dark place. And so, like, I, it's like I was still sort of Buddhist, I guess, in terms of beliefs. And then I was like, well, let me just go to this Christian club. And, I mean, because it's part of a college. And so it's like a lot of people. And, that only came about because I had met a rock climbing group and they're Christians and I was doing some rock climbing at the time. But um I ended up hearing like one of their passages and I'm not sure I'm sure I have it in my notes. Um but anyways, as I was hearing it, even though I was unawakened, I was like I was actually putting together the pieces of the puzzle to where I was like I, I could understand sort of the more true meaning, I guess, that was trying to get portrayed across. And the guy that was, like the father or whatever that was like the pastor or whatever that was teaching it, I realized I'm like he doesn't see it the way I see it, and he's telling all these people, and I'm like I believe he's like kind of telling them wrong. And I was like, it just sucks because I feel like my interpretation is spot on, but I can't yet verify it because I'm not awakened. And so anyways, like after it all got said and done and we're like, we had a couple friends or whatever meeting and just like a group kind of talking about stuff. I was like, I'm like I'm like there's work to be done, Well, because whatever the passage was about, I could see what it was kind of saying. It was like, there's there were like the apostles and like Jesus and just um and so I guess what I'm trying to say is like there was the starting of a lineage kind of similar to Buddhism, if you will.
Mm.
And like it it just seemed like the line was cut somewhere. And so anyways, I was trying to tell him, I'm like, don't you think like there's work to be done? Like why would they have why would this book have been created if they knew that the ultimate truth was that there wasn't any work to be done and that you could just, just arbitrarily live? I'm like, it's pointing at something deeper. And I'm like, you know, and I'm like, I know it's pointing towards enlightenment. And I'm like, it was just so weird because it's like, I know I'm not there. And I would tell these guys that it's like, I know I'm not there, but it's like, once I get there, it's like, I'd want to tell you and show you. And then it's like, now it's like finally there. And it's like, I have no urge to, to even
Mm.
enter back into that realm at all. But it's like, it's just crazy because they think they can just read it and not do anything to achieve like a better experience. Um, it's like, why read? It's like the Bible could be very profound if you actually did stuff, but none of them do stuff, and it's like their pastors just don't it I guess, like, contrary to Buddhism, it's like the lineage is always intact, so it's like the people that are doing the teaching, it's like they've already achieved the enlightenment, whereas it's like you look at Christianity and it's like the pastor is really just someone who is on a huge thought train and has these huge conceptions and ideas about what life is, but yet they're not enlightened themselves. So it's like it's just a
Mm.
thought. It's just this whole big story. And it's like,
Yeah, they're all seekers.
yeah, they're all seekers, but they don't know it.
Mm.
It's weird.
That's right. And it's amazing. I come across frequently people on the Buddhist path, and a lot of the traditional Buddhist movements never talk about enlightenment. That blew me away a little bit. Yeah. And well, you might have heard me say this one before, but after going to lots and lots of Vipassana, 10-day Vipassana silent retreats, meditation, I asked one bloke who was really, really into it. He went to every single 10-day retreat and 20-day retreats and bigger ones as well. And I said to him, "Where's all the enlightened people?" And his response to me was, "Oh, maybe next lifetime," which
Yeah,
that was
crazy.
that I just couldn't get that. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not waiting till next lifetime. I want it this lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was saying. Like my therapist at the time, it's like she's just 100% convinced that it's like, oh, this lifetime is just going to be about virtue and it'll be some other lifetime. I'm like, you have the here and now. I'm like, what's wrong with what's here? You know,
Mm.
it's almost sad.
It,
It's
it
like,
it could be. You could get lost in the sadness of it. Yeah. And especially when you can see that doing what the Bible says, doing what your father says, doing what society says is all missing the point. It is all at a conceptual level, that whole thing. It never gets to appreciate that there is something deeper, something called experience. Experience is like tagged on to the end of the stories that they get lost in. But then that's most people in society. It's what are we talking about with all the awakened people in the world? And there's probably more awakened people now than there ever has been in history. But they wouldn't add up to 1% of the population.
no.
But I mean, in Christianity, there were kind of non-dual traditions as well,
Sure.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
medieval times and so on. But I don't know. I mean, my only contact with the church is when I go to funerals. So, the funeral of my grandma, for example, I was really shocked because the pastor, I think he talked before, like everything had to be quick, and he talked to my family. But when he talked about my grandma, the only thing that he would say was that she did a good potato salad. And that's actually the thing that every German grandma does, so it's not even anything very special. So I was really wondering, like, didn't this guy study theology or something like that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's like the only thing that you have to say about when it like to give a summary of a person when when this person has gone.
That's probably better than what often happens in this country, and that is that the pastor that you've never seen before in your life gets up and says all these good, wonderful things about you. And he doesn't
Ah,
know you. He's got no idea. He just makes it up on the spot, or he gathers a little bit from family history, but he wants to say good things about you. He never gets up and say, well, he was an arsehole. That never happens.
but yeah, it was like okay, the potato salad and then a bit of extra mayonnaise, which is like something
Yeah,
about the Lord, the Holy Spirit, and the Son, and
yeah,
that was
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, I even as a kid, I was blown away by how out of touch with reality those things were. Weddings and funerals and all sorts of things that we did. Yeah.
yeah, it's like a bad comedy, kind of.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. But our relationship to them is important. And it just seems to me that it's so obvious that if I can't know myself at any great depth, I certainly can't know anybody else at any great depth. And that what I do know is that it's fucking amazing that they're alive and operating and doing what they're doing. Yeah.
I was wondering, Vince, so like in one of the other calls, you were saying how um like sometimes like you can just see thought as like you can see a certain thought as thought, and then it can kind of sometimes lead to it like dissolving, I guess, and maybe going more into just visceral experience, even if it might still be like uncomfortable visceral experience or something. And then other times, you might sometimes like start seeing, uh, current thought as thought, but then, you might want to like stay in it, I guess, just because, it could be like useful. Like you were saying, how like some thoughts are useful and others aren't. And so I guess like, after I guess like you elucidated that, I started kind of looking there a little bit, and it's like, it's almost like when you it's almost like when you look at it through that lens, I guess, as it's happening, like as thought is starting to get seen a little bit, it really begins automatically kind of highlighting this, like it it seems to highlight choice a lot more and like make it seem like there's a chooser of like, okay, like am I gonna you know, go down the rabbit hole of just, you know, trying to keep the thought alive, so to speak, and not necessarily just see it as thought. Or, you know, am I gonna like um see it as thought sort of in the hope that it might dissolve easier? But it's just like it really does bring about like the sense of like a chooser back online like a hell of a lot more when when you look at it that way, which is like fine, I guess. I mean, it because it is, but like I just thought that was kind of an
Hmm.
interesting thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, what come up for me here is that you'll get over that. That's just something to do with early days stuff. The old habits still being fairly active, you know. Um, See, I don't have that. I don't. Not that I'm a great example. I don't know, you know. Anyway, but I'm not aware of my thoughts most of the
Right.
time, or rather, I'm not aware of making them distinct and separate.
Hmm.
So I can imagine. See, just as an example, I just thought of my tinnitus, and of course, as soon as I think of my tinnitus, I can hear it. But until I think of it, I can't hear it. It's a non-issue for me. I don't have the sound of ringing in my ears unless I think about it.
Hmm.
Well, thoughts are like that. I don't have thoughts unless I think about them.
Hmm.
And I've kind of said this one, but I don't know if it impacts. But it's like I disappear altogether into, I'm not even aware of experiencing things. It's just if I if I was to if you were to say to me, stop and tell me what's going on right now, I could create a story around it. But unless you
Hmm.
say that, there is I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. I'm not I'm not meaning to be vague. I just don't know quite how to put this. But I don't say to myself, "Oh, that's a useful thought," or "That's not a useful thought," or "I'm having thoughts about this," or "I'm not having thoughts about that," or "I'm feeling uncomfortable." So something's none of that goes on. It just I don't know what happens. So I don't know where did today go. It's now midnight, 8 minutes past midnight. In the day here. I have to construct a mental story about any incident that I want to remember happened during the day today. But otherwise, if I don't do that, I would have to say, I don't know. I don't know what happened today. I don't know where the
Hmm.
time went. I don't know where the hours went. I don't know anything about any of that. I do I do I know now? Do I know what's going on for me right now? Only if I construct a story about it. I have to do it. I have to make an effort to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of a weird one, isn't it? Yeah.
I
It
guess
is
like
weird. I was going to say this really quick. It is weird to, when listening to you say that, but I just want to tell you, thank you so much for saying that because that's how I am most of the time. And it can be frightening for me because it's still
Okay.
fairly new. You can,
Mm.
so for me to actually, and I think I heard you say something else recently about whatever, it's along the same line. And the point is, it's before I had this, because yes, I was Buddhist for many years and no one ever talked about being enlightened. And so, the whole thing about this is when stuff did whatever, here I am now. But no one ever talked about things like this and what they meant or what. And so I would experience them and think, oh, there I go being crazy again, or whatever. So the fact that you actually mentioned that, and I've never even thought to ask you about that, I just noticed that's the experience I'm having is like, I, I can't tell you what happened.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
can't.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm guilty of just throwing that under being old, and my granddaughter that I hang around with most of the time these days, will constantly bring up, are you going through the sundown thing or whatever, whatever that Alzheimer's or old age thing is. And I just, because it is a little bit of it can be a frightening thing, because it's like a new normal to actually, allow myself once I started realizing, oh yeah, okay, so yeah, I did hear one Buddhist monk over in Australia, Ajahn Brahm. And I don't know where he is over there somewhere in Australia, but he's the first person that they never talk about enlightenment or anything like that. No. And I was doing a lot of Buddhist things with them, but he did happen to have an experience one time where, sorry, but he had a bowel movement and he was talking about it being the most beautiful experience of his entire life. And he would go into every possible description you could think of. And he was just like, you could tell he was just transcended into a different place of looking at something. And well, at the time, I didn't think anything about it. But now looking back on it, I think that was definitely, he was probably, it fully awake, experiencing the celebration of having a bowel movement,
Mm,
but it wasn't talked about. So a
mm.
lot of the things that I go through now, and that one in particular, the way you just described it, which is the reason I love listening to you and the reason I love to come to these meetings, even if I'm just a fly on the wall and listen, because you'll say things that I've been experiencing that I didn't even know to ask about, or that I didn't even realize were uncomfortable for me. So just when you were describing that about the day, yes, that's every freaking day for me. It's like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. And if somebody tries to ask me about it, I probably couldn't remember what I had for breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Yeah.
I really thought about it and put a lot of attention to it, it's like I could probably reconstruct it, but it just doesn't
Exactly.
happen.
Yeah. That is that an evaluation happens. Is it
Yeah.
worth the effort of trying to remember?
Yeah. Like who cares? So when you said that and I was like, okay, I didn't even realize how much I needed to hear that. But I did. So I'm glad you pointed that out. And it is the reason that I stay around waiting for those little gems to show up. And just, so thank you for that.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it? I imagine, because I can't know, but I imagine that everybody has a absolutely unique experience of waking up and being awake. Yet there are common factors that are shared, although as soon as we get into the details of any of them, of course they're going to be unique as well. But there are bits that we seem to share. Yeah. It's yeah. Knowing what people need to wake up. That's a crazy one. I've got no idea. And yet we just poke here and poke there and it happens or not. Yeah.
I was giving it a lot of thought, you know, yesterday, really just because of like like Florence in that meeting, you know, how she was saying like I was kind of jarring and stuff. And I got to thinking, you know, I think it can kind of require two things potentially. And like in the sense that what I've begun to notice in a lot of the seekers is like they don't have what I would think of as ideal, you know, a level of skill of like mindful awareness, so to speak. And then as a result of that, when they go into story mode, they can't tell that they're in story mode as they're in
Yeah,
story
it's a
mode.
big one.
And but I ended up thinking though that in knowing that, I think as a guide, I think there can actually be two different paths or like a, you know, or a combinedness of both of them. And that could be one of two things is I think path number one that could be possible is you could try to almost get the seeker to start trying to level up their mindful awareness by doing some arbitrary practice. I mean, it could be as simple as just like take note of every single gray car you see on the road throughout the day, or like, you know, or it could be something more structured, like, you know, just keep your mind on the breath or something. And whatever it is, you know, that could lead to a level of mindful awareness so that when story arises, they could see it as story arises when you're trying to tell them, like when you're trying to do pointing, so that it's no longer a barrier to trying to point. But then I was thinking too that, you know, even if they actually have a very low skill of mindful awareness, I think you could actually completely bypass that as a hindrance for them by trying to point um very quickly and very successive in such a way that it it forces, like as a guide, like you could try to force their awareness to be constantly shifting towards very specific areas. And in doing so, it almost makes it impossible for story to come up. And so because if they have like a low level of mindful awareness, when story comes up, that would be a huge hindrance. But if you can bypass story coming up altogether so that when you're saying like look here, look there, look here, look there, oh, did you notice this? And you just say it like really quickly, you know, there's no room for story to come up. So then as a skill, what ends up getting built is their ability to look because story isn't a problem. And then at the same time, it's weird too, because as you're doing that, you know, it's also in a way building their mindful awareness as a skill as well. But so I came up with an analogy. I was like, I think the path is really kind of synonymous to like an axe. Like if you have bare metal, you first need to do a lot of heavy shaping, a lot of heavy grinding, you know, before it could ever even come close to looking like an edge. And then once that happens, then the honing can begin. Like once you have an edge established, then you can start honing it to get it really, really sharp. But, you know, I was thinking, you know, because like I think Flo was right, you know, that I could sort of try guiding in a better way. And so I was thinking like how could I possibly do that in a way that would still resonate with like me? And I was thinking it's like, you know, ultimately on the path towards awakening, it's like there has to be a lot of grinding that's done before the honing process. So like, you know, what I mean by that is like their skill to actually look is like a huge skill. It's like a huge undertaking, and that's like, they just need that as a skill for one. And so that's like the whole shaping of the axe phase. And it's like during that whole shaping of the axe phase, it's like I think as a guide, you could actually I came up with a way to where I could try to build that as a skill in them, but make it so it's potentially a very pleasant experience and very satisfactory and a very happy experience versus, the experience that could have happened, from the way I was doing it the other day. And so I was thinking, it's like, how could I make it so I can build up their skill to look, but make it so it's a very pleasant experience for them. And so I realized, I'm like, I could do it based off of, you know, asking them about pleasant memories. And so, like, let me see, because I wrote some stuff down. So my idea, and I want to try this, um, is like that I could continually ask them to look at varyingly different types of pleasant memories. So like, for instance, I could say, okay, and then I could structure it too, so maybe they do something after each one. So like, I could tell them like, okay, like at some point a memory is going to pop up in your mind, and then once it does, you know, start counting out loud 1 through 5. And then once you hit 5, then you can share the memory with us. And so it would go something like this. I could say, okay, like share a pleasant memory that took place outdoors with your parents, because that's like super specific. So it's like like it would take a while for that memory to pop up, and then and then they would at some point that favorite memory would pop up, and then they would start counting 1 to 5, and then they would share it with the group. So it would be like a really cool group experience for everyone involved. And then right after they share it, I'd be like, okay, like now share a pleasant, your favorite pleasant memory, that's PG, that occurred outside with a childhood best friend, so it's like ultra specific things that are going to take a while for that memory to pop up, and there won't be thought as much as it is just a waiting for that memory to come up. And so I could do like, 4 or 5, different ones. And then once they get done with all of that, I could be like, okay, like, you know, so like those memories, like they just popped up like out of nowhere, like, and like, hey, did you notice how like, I might have asked one memory to come up and then a different question, and one of them might have taken 3 seconds, and then you started counting because you found your answer, whereas another one took 20 or 30 seconds, and it's like it just happened on its own, and then like what was happening during the counting, it's like you were just counting 1 through 5, and then like what happened when you were sharing, it was like you're just sharing, and then I could go through the whole cycle again where it's like I'm gonna ask you the same exact questions of memories, but I want you to pick a different pleasant memory for each one of those. And then at the end of that one, I could be like, okay, so like you have at least 2 really good memories for each one of those things, but it's like, you know, why did the first time you said what you said on the first time and not, like you didn't end up saying the memory from the second time? And it's like, because it just popped up. It popped up
Mm.
without your consent, it just, and so then I imagine because that could like really begin building up their skill level of looking, and then as they get to a point where, like, as a guide, you can clearly see, like, okay, like they've really built up this skill now. It's like at some point they have to start being willing to look at the unpleasant parts of their experience as well. Because the way I view it is like you can't get to awakening if you don't look at every aspect of your reality, which includes the unpleasant. So, but I would try to postpone the looking at, neutral and unpleasant things for as long as possible. Like I try and build up their skill level of looking as much as I can by only trying to bring up positive experiences. And then once I feel like their skill level is really good and it's like really tight, then I could say like, hey, like, okay, do you mind if we start beginning to work on a little bit more neutral things and maybe a little bit more unpleasant things? And then, you know, and then maybe too like a code yellow word and a code red word, once you start delving into stuff like that, where it's like, if it's if you want to keep on going, but you want it to be a little bit less jarring or you want it to be a little more pleasant, they could say yellow. And then if they just want it to stop altogether, then they could say red. And that way, like other people that are onlookers, they know that there's sort of this implied consent that like they're fine with how it's going, so at least the process could keep on happening. I don't know. That's kind of like what I was imagining.
So what I'm hearing is that you've been thinking about this a lot, and you're really keen to be guiding, eh?
Yeah.
Mm. So you're able to go into LU Guide Central and tell them that you want to guide. Tell Nerina that you want to start guiding, and they'll instigate that. They'll turn you from blue to red, and away you go.
Right.
Now, they do have all those files are there under the files heading, the file menu on LU Guide Central. But I say, well, that's fine and dandy. There are a lot of exercises in there that people have come up with over the years, and there's quite a few documents in there that you could read, but you don't actually need to remember any of them. You can just use your intuition about what's going on. So you will learn about yourself as well as about other people as you work with them. So my suggestion is go and ask them, tell them you want a guide, and they'll start doing it. They'll set you up for it. Because there's always plenty. I think I saw a thing yesterday saying there was 20 people waiting at the gate.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's cool too, like seeing it happen on video though, just because you kind of get like an instant feedback of like exactly, like if you're trying to point or something, you get to see it like exactly where the person is at, and it's so cool like seeing the instant feedback.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I find it pretty frustrating to try and guide people with words on the forum at LU. It's really, and sometimes I just ached for a face to face with somebody instead of being able to even though, and I end up my responses are pages long sometimes, way too big. Yeah, but just so you got to limit what you respond to as well sometimes.
Hmm.
All right, well, it's up past midnight now, so I'm going to head off to bed. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Vince.